My bank account balance was $0. Not low, not pending, empty. And the last person who saw me cry about it laughed. I'm glad you're here. Truly. Because what happened next took me years to say out loud. And even now, I still check my phone afterward like something might change. It won't. But the truth deserves air. This happened after a family reunion. A long weekend that was supposed to be harmless. Food, photos, old stories repeated for the fifth time. The kind of gathering where everyone pretends the past is settled because it's inconvenient to reopen. I didn't check my bank account right away. That's important. I didn't suspect anything. Not then. It was Sunday night, around 9:47 p.m. I remember because I just plugged my phone in and the charging screen popped up. I opened my banking app out of habit. The same one I'd used for over 12 years. Same password. Same fingerprint scan. The number didn't load at first. Then it refreshed. $0. I stayed at it, waiting for the decimal to move. It didn't. I refreshed again. Still nothing. I scrolled. No savings. No checking. Just a red warning banner that said available balance, $0. I told myself, it's a glitch. That's what reasonable people say. I checked my email. There was one message. Timestamp 6:12 p.m. Large withdrawal processed. I didn't understand it then. I walked back into the guest room, my bag still on the bed where I'd dropped it earlier. My hands were shaking, but not in a dramatic way. More like my body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. I asked my son-in-law if he'd seen my phone charger. That was the excuse. He was sitting on the couch scrolling, legs crossed, completely relaxed. He looked up and said, "Check your purse." So I did. That's when I told him, calmly, quietly, "I think something's wrong with my bank account." He didn't even ask which bank. He snorted, just once, a short sound. Then he said, "We needed it more than you." I remember the exact words because they didn't sound angry. They sounded practical, like he was explaining a late fee. I said, "What?" He shrugged, didn't look at me. "You weren't using it." That wasn't the wise part. I reached for my bag because I didn't know what else to do. That's when I said something I hadn't planned. Something that surprised even me. "Then you won't mind what's coming next." He laughed, actually laughed. And someone else in the house laughed too, though I never found out who. That's when there was a loud bang. Not metaphorical. A real sound. The front door flew open so hard it hit the wall. Everyone froze. No one knew yet what that moment would cost them. At the time, all I knew was that one account had been emptied, one sentence had been said, and one door had just opened that couldn't be closed again. And there was one document I hadn't looked at yet. Before I begin, tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if stories like this stay with you, please like and subscribe. It really helps me keep sharing the truths I've carried for years. Before all of this, my life was ordinary in the way people don't appreciate until it's gone. I lived in Madison, Wisconsin, in a 2-bedroom townhouse I'd owned since 2011. Beige siding, narrow driveway, the kind of place you repaint every few years and tell yourself you'll sell someday. I worked as a compliance coordinator for a regional insurance firm. Not flashy, stable, 4 to 2 hours a week, benefits, direct deposit on the 1st and 15th like clockwork. I was careful with money, almost boring about it. One checking account, one savings account, one credit card with a $9,500 limit that I paid off every month. I tracked expenses in a notes app on my phone. Groceries, utilities, gas, even coffee. I wasn't rich, but I was solvent, and that mattered to me. Family had always been complicated, but manageable. My daughter, Lauren, was 29 at the time. Smart, defensive, loyal to the wrong people sometimes. She married Evan 3 years earlier. He was charming in public, efficient with words, always sounded like he knew more than everyone else in the room. People liked him because he spoke calmly. After their wedding, they struggled. Rent jumped. His contract work dried up. Lauren called me crying one night in March, asking if I could help temporarily. I said yes. Of course I did. It's just a bridge, she said. That's what family is, I replied. The help wasn't reckless. Or so I thought. I added Lauren as a linked user to one account so she could pay utilities if needed. The bank clerk explained it carefully. View and transfer access only. No debit card. No cash withdrawals without authorization. I remember nodding, signing, trusting. Evan never thanked me. Not once. He just said, "This will help." The family reunion that weekend was at my sister's house in Rockford, Illinois, about 90 miles from my place. I drove down Friday afternoon. Gas receipt, $42.17. I remember because I logged it. The weekend itself was uneventful. That's what makes this harder to explain. No arguments. No raised voices. Evan grilled burgers. Lauren helped clean. Someone spilled red wine on the deck. Normal. But there were small things. Things I noticed but didn't name. Evan checking his phone too often. Lauren watching me instead of listening. A conversation stopping when I entered the room. At one point, Evan said, "You're lucky you don't have real expenses." I laughed politely. So did everyone else. That night, I overheard a whisper from the kitchen. Just a fragment. Evan's voice. Low. She won't notice. I didn't understand it then. On Sunday afternoon, as I packed my bag, Lauren hugged me longer than usual. She said, "Thank you for everything." Her voice shook. Just slightly. I told myself she was tired. When I drove home, traffic was light. I remember thinking how calm I felt. Like something heavy had been postponed without me realizing it. By the time I checked my bank account that night, the weekend was already over. What I didn't know yet, what no one told me, was that Friday afternoon, while I was driving down, a series of transactions had already begun. Small at first, too small to trigger alarms, and one of them carried a note that read, "Authorized family transfer." I didn't understand it then, but I would. The first thing I did after the door slammed open wasn't scream or ask questions. I sat down. That surprised people. It surprised me too. I remember lowering myself onto the edge of the bed in the guest room, my phone still in my hand, the screen dimming because I hadn't touched it in a few seconds. I tapped it awake again and refreshed the banking app one more time, as if repetition might undo reality. Still $0. I scrolled the transaction list slowly. Not panicked, just focused. That's when I saw the pattern. There were 9 transfers over 2 days. Friday afternoon through Sunday morning. Amounts that looked deliberate. $480, $620, $1,150, $900. Not round, not random. Structured to stay under internal review thresholds. I knew those thresholds. I worked in compliance. Each transfer listed the same note, authorized family transfer. That wording didn't sit right. I hadn't authorized anything. Not verbally, not in writing, not through the app. And I never used notes like that. I wrote things like electric bill or reimbursement. Practical words, specific words. I checked the destination account numbers. They were partially masked, but the last 4 digits repeated. 7724 every time. I didn't recognize them. I searched my email again, this time carefully. Spam folder, promotions, deleted. There were 3 automated messages I hadn't seen earlier, buried under receipts and newsletters. External account added. Transfer scheduled. Transfer completed. All timestamped while I was on the road. I didn't understand it then. I walked back into the living room where everyone had gathered after the noise at the door. No one was speaking. Evan stood near the window, arms crossed. Lauren wouldn't look at me. I asked one question. Just one. Did you add an external account to my bank profile? Lauren flinched. Not dramatically. Just enough. Evan answered for her. It's just paperwork. That sentence stuck with me. It's just paperwork. I asked him whose account it was. He said, ours. Plural. Confident. Like it settled something. I asked Lauren if that was true. She nodded once. Didn't speak. I said, you can't do that without my permission. Evan smiled. Not kindly. You gave access. That wasn't true, but it was close enough to sound convincing. I went back to the guest room and locked the door. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They felt heavy, like they belonged to someone else. I called the bank's fraud line at 10:14 p.m. I remember the time because the automated system announced it. I waited 18 minutes on hold. When a woman finally answered, her voice was calm and practiced. She asked if I recognized the transfers. I said no. She asked if I had granted third-party access. I said yes, but limited. She paused. She said carefully, the access level on file allows external account linking. That sentence landed harder than the empty balance. I asked when it was changed. She told me, Thursday, 3:02 p.m. I was at work then, in a meeting, my phone in my bag. I asked who authorized the change. She said, the primary account holder. That didn't make sense. I asked for documentation. She said it would take 24 to 48 hours to generate. I hung up and sat on the floor, back against the bed, staring at the wall. I felt embarrassed. Not scared. Embarrassed. Like I'd missed something obvious and paid for it with dignity. I replayed the weekend in my head. Evan's phone. The whispers. Lauren's hub. Two questions kept repeating. How did they change the access level? And why did they think I wouldn't fight it? I didn't understand it then, but the answer was already waiting in my inbox. And it wasn't subtle. It was a PDF with my name on it. The email arrived at 6:41 a.m. the next morning. I hadn't slept. I'd laid on the guest bed fully dressed, phone face down on my chest like it might vibrate with something important if I stayed still enough. When it finally buzzed, I didn't jump. I just turned the screen over and read the subject line. Account access modification, confirmation. I opened it slowly. Attached was a PDF, 3 pages, clean formatting, bank letterhead, my name printed at the top in bold, exactly as it appeared on my account. Page 1 summarized the changes. User permissions updated. External account successfully linked. Effective date, Thursday 3:02 p.m. Page 2 contained the authorization details. That's where my stomach dropped. There was a signature. My signature. Not a scanned copy. Not a photo. A digital authorization signature generated through the bank's internal system. It used my full legal name, spelled correctly. The IP address was listed beneath it. A residential connection. Rockford, Illinois. I didn't understand it then. Page 3 listed the destination account. Routing number. Account type. Joint checking. Primary holders, Lauren M. and Evan R. There was a note field at the bottom. Family expense consolidation. I stared at that phrase for a long time. Family expense consolidation. I checked my calendar. Thursday at 3:02 p.m. I'd been in a compliance review meeting with 6 other people. There were timestamps to prove it. Calendar logs. Outlook invite. Even a Teams recording. I opened my laptop and pulled everything up. My work VPN logs. My phone's location history. Google Maps showed me parked in the office lot until 5:11 p.m. I wasn't in Rockford. I forwarded the PDF to myself, then to my personal email. Then I took screenshots, not because I knew what to do yet, but because something in me understood that things disappear when you trust them to stay. I drove home mid-morning. The house felt unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone who'd been careless. I sat at the kitchen table and laid everything out. 9 transfers. Total amount, $18,420. Not emergency money. Not groceries. That was nearly 6 months of my living expenses. I opened my savings account history. Same pattern. Smaller withdrawals. Same note. Same destination account. Another $6,300. I felt lightheaded. I stood up and leaned against the counter until it passed. I called the bank again. This time I asked for a supervisor. I gave names, times, IP addresses. I told them I had proof I wasn't present. The man on the line said, "We'll open a review." I asked how long. He said, up to 90 days. 90 days with no access to my money. I asked if the funds could be frozen. He said, they've already cleared. I asked if the destination account could be locked. He paused. That account belongs to different holders. That sentence hit differently than the rest. Different holders. I called Lauren. She didn't answer. I texted. We need to talk. Now. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then nothing. I called Evan. He picked up immediately. You should be grateful, he said before I could speak. We kept the lights on. I asked him how they signed my name. He said, you don't remember everything you authorize. That was the moment something inside me collapsed. Not anger. Clarity. I realized they weren't panicking. They weren't apologizing. They were justifying, which meant they believed they were safe. I ended the call without responding. I spent the rest of the afternoon pulling records. Every email, every login alert, every bank notice I'd ever ignored because nothing bad had ever happened before. And then I found it, buried in my deleted email folder. Timestamp 2 weeks earlier. Subject line, action required, verify account security. I hadn't opened it. It contained a verification link, and the click history showed it had been opened from Lauren's device. That was the lowest point. Not the money, not the betrayal. The realization that the first move had been made quietly, patiently, while I still believed everything was fine. I didn't cry. I closed my laptop and sat very still. Because by then, the truth was clear, and so was what I needed to do next. I didn't confront them right away. That's the part people expect to hear differently. They imagine shouting, accusations, a dramatic demand for answers. That isn't what happened. What happened was quieter, slower, much more deliberate. The morning after I found the deleted email, I took a sick day. I didn't tell anyone why. I didn't mention the bank. I didn't call Lauren. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and opened a clean notebook. Page 1, top line, timeline. I wrote down everything. Dates, times, locations, amounts, IP addresses. I matched transactions to my Google location history. I printed calendar invites. I highlighted overlaps. I made copies of the PDF. 3 digital, 2 paper. This wasn't emotion. This was control. I called my bank again, but this time I didn't argue. I asked procedural questions. What department handled access disputes? How digital signatures were verified? Whether internal logs recorded device fingerprints? The woman on the line said, it's all logged. I asked for a case number. She gave me one. I wrote it down carefully. I asked for the fraud affidavit forms. She emailed them within minutes. I didn't fill them out yet. Next, I called an attorney. Not a friend of a friend. A real one. I searched for financial exploitation of family fraud and read reviews until one name kept appearing. His assistant scheduled a consultation for Thursday at 2:30 p.m. flat fee, $350. I paid it with my credit card. That afternoon, I locked down everything else. New passwords, 2-factor authentication. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I requested full credit reports. No new accounts. No loans. That was a relief I hadn't expected to feel. I didn't tell Lauren. I didn't tell Evan. That silence wasn't weakness. It was leverage. In the days that followed, they texted me as if nothing had happened. Lauren sent a photo of her dog. Evan sent a message that said, "Hope you're feeling better." I didn't respond. I checked the joint account activity through the partial visibility the bank allowed during review. The money was moving. Fast. Rent. Car payment. A $2,100 electronics purchase. A flight booked to Phoenix. That one caught my attention. Round trip. 2 seats. Departing in 11 days. I printed that receipt too. At the attorney's office, I laid everything out. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react. He just read. When he finished, he said, "This isn't a misunderstanding." I nodded. He explained my options. Civil recovery. Criminal report. Bank arbitration. He explained timelines. Risks. What would happen to family relationships? I told him I wasn't interested in preserving anything that required me to stay quiet. He said, "Then we move carefully." We drafted a demand letter. Formal. Factual. No emotion. It listed the amounts, the dates, the unauthorized access, the IP discrepancy. It cited statutes I didn't recognize but trusted. He asked if I wanted to send it immediately. I said no, not yet. I wanted one more thing. Proof they knew what they were doing. That came 3 days later. Evan texted me at 11:06 p.m. You're overthinking this. I didn't reply. A minute later, another message. Family doesn't do this. I took screenshots, uploaded them to a folder labeled Evidence, Personal Statements. Then Lauren finally called. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She said, "We never asked you to help." That was the sentence. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about survival or desperation. It was about entitlement. I ended the call politely. I thanked her for clarifying. That night, I emailed the attorney and told him to send the letter. And then I did something irreversible. I filed the fraud affidavit. I didn't feel powerful when I clicked submit. I felt steady, because once that button was pressed, the situation no longer belonged to them. It was moving, and they had no idea how fast. The first call came 4 to 6 minutes after the fraud affidavit was submitted. I know the exact number because I was standing in my kitchen watching the microwave clock count down the seconds on a reheated cup of coffee. My phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. I let it ring. Then it rang again. Then Lauren's name appeared on the screen. I answered on the third ring. "What did you do?" she asked. Her voice wasn't calm anymore. It wasn't hysterical either. It was tight, controlled in the way people get when the ground moves under them and they are trying not to show it. "I followed procedure," I said. There was a pause. Evan's voice came through the speaker, sharp and fast. "You filed fraud." "Yes." "You didn't have to do that." I didn't raise my voice. "You didn't have to touch my accounts." Silence. Then Evan spoke again, slower now. "This will ruin things." That sentence mattered. Not "we're sorry," not "we'll fix it," just consequences. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, the bank's fraud department called. Different tone this time. Urgent. The representative told me the destination account had been flagged. Funds frozen pending investigation. I asked how much was still there. She told me $7,860. The rest was gone. Transferred. Spent. Cleared. I thanked her. That afternoon, the attorney emailed me. Subject line, next steps. The demand letter had been sent via certified mail and email. He attached the delivery confirmation. Evan had opened it 3 minutes after it landed. By evening, my phone was unusable. Texts, calls, voicemails, numbers I didn't recognize, family members who suddenly wanted to understand. My sister left a message that said, "Let's all calm down." I didn't respond to any of them. At 8:12 p.m., Evan sent one message that changed the tone completely. "We'll return some of it." Some. That word sat on my screen longer than it should have. I forwarded the message to my attorney without comment. His reply came quickly. "Do not engage." The next morning, Lauren showed up at my house. She didn't knock. She rang the bell twice, then knocked anyway. I watched through the window before opening the door. Her face looked different. Tired. Older. Not angry. Frightened. She said my name softly. "Please." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She started explaining immediately. Rent. Stress. Evan's work. How it got away from them. How they meant to pay it back. I let her talk. When she finished, I said one sentence. "You signed my name." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I continued. "You changed access levels. You intercepted security emails. You transferred money into your joint account." She whispered, "He said it was okay." That was it. That was the excuse. I told her the bank had frozen what remained. I told her there was an investigation. I told her my attorney would handle all communication going forward. She cried then. Quietly. No drama. Evan pulled up 5 minutes later. He didn't get out of the car. He rolled down the window and said, "You're doing this to punish us." I shook my head. "I'm doing this to stop you." He laughed once. "Sure. Shut. You think you've won." I looked at him carefully before answering. I know I have. That afternoon, the bank issued a provisional credit for part of the stolen funds. $9,000. Not all, but enough to breathe. 2 days later, Evan's contract job was suspended pending background review. 3 days after that, the Phoenix flight was cancelled. An irreversible action had already been taken. Not by me, by the truth. The noise stopped before I was ready for the quiet. That was the hardest adjustment. 1 week my phone wouldn't stop vibrating, and the next it sat face down on the table for hours without a single notification. No explanations, no apologies, no more pressure to talk it out. Just silence. The bank's investigation moved slower after the initial freeze. That part was draining in a different way. Paperwork, follow-up calls, repeating the same facts to different people. I learned which questions mattered and which ones didn't. The provisional credit stayed. That helped. It meant groceries without anxiety, gas without math, sleep without checking balances at 3 a.m. But it wasn't closure. 32 days after the affidavit, I received the first official determination. Unauthorized access confirmed. That was the wording. Not mistake. Not misunderstanding. Confirmed. The bank recovered $7,860 from the frozen account and returned it to me. The remainder, just over $7,800, was deemed unrecoverable. Spent in good faith, they said. I didn't argue. I'd already accepted that some losses don't come back. What I didn't expect was the criminal side. 2 weeks later, a detective called. He introduced himself calmly and asked if I was willing to make a statement regarding financial exploitation. I said yes. We met at a small office downtown. No flashing lights. No drama. Just questions and notes. He asked about access, about intent, about whether I believed the actions were deliberate. I said they planned it. He nodded once. Lauren didn't contact me again after that. Through my sister, I heard that she'd moved out of the apartment. That Evan had told people things got complicated. That he was angry. That he felt betrayed. I felt nothing about that. What I did feel was grief. Not loud grief. The quiet kind. The realization that the version of family I'd believed in wasn't real. That I'd been valued for stability, not presence. My attorney closed the civil case after the bank's recovery. He asked if I wanted to pursue damages. I declined. Not out of mercy. Out of exhaustion. I changed my will. Updated beneficiaries. Closed the joint account entirely. I opened a new bank account with a different institution. New routines. New habits. I stopped sharing details. Stopped explaining myself. Some people stayed. My neighbor who brought soup without asking questions. A coworker who covered a meeting when I needed a day. My sister, eventually, after she stopped asking me to be the bigger person. Others disappeared. That told me what I needed to know. 6 months later, I ran into Evan at a grocery store on the edge of town. He looked through me like I wasn't there. That was fine. Lauren wasn't with him. I paid for my groceries, $86.42. I remember because I logged it. On the drive home, I realized something had shifted. I no longer replayed the weekend in my head. I no longer checked my email with dread. I no longer waited for an apology that would never come. What I lost wasn't just money. It was an illusion. And losing it gave me something quieter but stronger in return. Control. Not over them. Over myself. There was nothing left to expose. Nothing left to prove. Only a life that finally felt like it belonged to me again. And that was enough. When people ask me now how I'm doing, I tell them the truth. I say I'm steady. Not healed. Not stronger in some dramatic way. Just steady. My days are predictable again. I wake up, make coffee, check the weather, go to work. I pay my bills. I lock my doors. I don't share passwords. I don't explain boundaries. What changed most wasn't my finances. It was my definition of responsibility. For a long time, I believed being responsible meant absorbing discomfort so others didn't have to feel it. Covering gaps. Smoothing consequences. Staying quiet when something felt off because speaking up would cause problems. I don't believe that anymore. Responsibility, I learned, means telling the truth when it's inconvenient. It means protecting what you worked for even when the person threatening it shares your last name. It means understanding that silence is not generosity when it allows harm to continue. I still think about Lauren sometimes. Not with anger, with a distant sadness. I hope she figures out who she is without someone else telling her what's acceptable. I hope she learns the difference between help and entitlement. I don't wait for that to happen. That's another thing I learned. Closure doesn't arrive from the people who hurt you. It arrives when you stop handing them access to your accounts, your energy, your peace. I used to think strength was loud, confrontational, demanding. It isn't. Strength is filing paperwork when your hands feel heavy. Strength is waiting on hold and saying the same facts again without apology. Strength is walking away without slamming the door. Sometimes people ask if I regret helping in the first place. I don't. What I regret is ignoring the moment my instincts spoke quietly and I told them to wait their turn. I don't do that anymore. Now, when something feels off, I pause. I look. I verify. I don't rush to rescue. My life is smaller in some ways. Fewer gatherings, fewer assumptions, fewer open doors, but it's also cleaner, calmer, honest, and that's a trade I'll take every time. Did you like my story? Please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. Trust is generosity, but access is earned.